The Speedy World. I am Syed Shabahat Ali and you're watching Faultlines. Economics remains a defining factor in Pakistan's politics. Given the economic situation that Pakistan is facing for last 1 decade, it has become a paramount question for every government that is taking charge on how to deal with the economy on multiple fronts. Not only the increasing public sector debt is a problem, but also the shrinking space for the common people. And amid all of this, there are coming some heartening news from the economic front as well. To talk about the current economic developments and particularly about the efforts that are being made by the government, we have today invited an economist in our show, in our studio, who is going to tell us more about it. Dr. Anil Suleiman is guest in our show, who's a reputable economist. Dr. Shaba, welcome you to the show.
Thank you very much.
So let's start from the background of the given economic situation that the government had before it took charge and the difference that we have been able to find during this very limited space of time.
Okay. Now, when we are looking at the economy, there are four factors on the parameters of which we say that the economy is going good or bad. And the first one is basically our economic growth rate. And at the economic growth rate, I would say that the recent ADB and IMF projections, they say that Pakistan economy is going to grow positively from 2 to 2.5%. So that is a positive sign. The second variable that we look that whether the economy is going good or bad, that is basically the current account. And in March 2024, Pakistan had the highest current account surplus in the last 9 years. And there are a number of factors that why the current account was surplus. It was mainly one of the factors is that is the Eid effect, that people were sending lots of remittances even though our trade remained in deficit, but that trade deficit has also reduced. So that is a good thing that your current account is in surplus. The third one is your budget deficit, and we have high hopes that given with the new government, the upcoming budget would be a people-friendly budget, and the positive sign is that there is a primary surplus into our budget. And the fourth one is the inflation. Like it has been discussed in a number of talk shows that now inflation stands at 17.3%. And there are different factors. One of the factor is basically that as compared to the last year, it was a high base year. Now it's going to be low. So in comparing to that, yes, the inflation has reduced. So when we look at these four variables, I think the Pakistan economy is going in the right direction, but the defining point is that we have a political stability.
Dr. Shab, you said the economic growth rate is currently between 2 to 2.25% is the projection. 2.25% is the projection, but this has remained in negative for some time and remained very stagnant,
yes,
at less than 1% for a long time. So what factors do you see at play to bring this growth rate slightly upward?
Okay, so there are two things. Number one is that in Pakistan, when we look into the policy corridors or when we see that what is the people's opinion, we say that development is more of a process rather than a product. But what in Pakistan, I think the general public think that the moment policy comes in, the next day there is going to be Aladdin lamp and the economy is going to be back on foot and it's going to be stable and sustainable, but that's not the case. So the first one, we have to understand that it is a process and it is a slow process when the variables start showing their pace. Number two, growth in any economy, may it be Pakistan or may it be any developed economy, that is defined by growth, and it's the domestic productivity. So in Pakistan, if you look at the three sectors, agriculture, service sector and manufacturing sector, we have been facing a productivity stagnation. But with some of the efforts, I think we must appreciate the SIFC contributions. Like it has actually given a catalyst approach to these sectors. Like in agriculture, we see that there is an expansion, and in the service sector, especially the IT sector and the banking sector, like if you look at the last year's bank statements of these banks, they show a very huge profitability. If you look at the IT sector, it has grown 39%. So the service sector has shown a very positive rebound. And I may not say that it is going to be a V-shaped recovery, but yes, it is showing positive signs, these sectors also.
Dr. Saab, you're talking about SIFC, and that reminds me of the argument that is made by many mainstream economists or economic commentators, and they say that FDI has not remained to be focus of many successive governments in Pakistan, like we had seen in the first decade of this century from 2003, 4, 5, 6, 7. We had seen an industrial growth rate of over 10%, an economic consistent growth rate of 7%. But then in the mid, we somewhere lost the momentum, and it's now when the government, with all the collective stakeholders coming, the provinces and the federation sitting on the table, don't you think this should have been done long ago?
It should have happened, but you see that we had this political instability for quite some time, and we have been dodging the bullet. One of the problems have been the high debt, and because of that high debt, we have been going to IMF, and the positive, it is a positive for Pakistan economy that we got this IMF last tranche of 1.1 billion US dollars. So that has given little hope. I know that depending upon IMF is not a good thing, and we need to have some indigenous strategy that, okay, what if minus IMF is Pakistan a stable country? Given the present conditions, it is difficult to say. But as it brings a very strong positive sentiment in the public, and one of the indicators is if you look at the stock exchange, it has crossed 70,000 points. So that shows the investors' confidence. Regarding your question about your FDI, yes, FDI has decreased. I always say that I talked about the domestic productivity, and domestic productivity only comes when your domestic investment is increasing. And foreign investor will only come to your country if your domestic investment is giving you high returns. As I always say, that foreign investor always follow the boom. It does not create the boom. And what we have in our mindset that all at once, when Saudi Arabia or when China or when ADB, this money is going to come, that is going to create a boom. Yes, it will, but it will take time. So we need to focus on our domestic investors, that they should start investing money in Pakistan economy, and that productivity stagnation needs to restart, and we need to have domestic productivity at a increasing pace.
Let me draw your attention to a news item that I read. It is Pakistan's food export have surpassed 5.6 billion US dollar in financial year 2024. And now, given the challenges that you have identified we are facing in services and manufacturing sector, given the high rate of interest and given the high price of utilities, agriculture has become once again a very pertinent section, if not the mainstay of economy. So how do you look at this development?
I think it is a very positive thing. You see that in Pakistan, when we analyze the three sectors, service sector, manufacturing sector and the agriculture sector, the problem that has happened that Pakistan has been an agrarian country, having a 42% labor force involved with it. But what has happened that when we made a shift from agriculture to manufacturing, without having a maturity in the manufacturing sector, we just hopped onto the service sector. And right now, service sector is contributing 52% in your GDP. So the manufacturing sector is still nascent. And when manufacturing sector is nascent, what we have to do is, in order to meet up our needs, we start importing those goods. And that's why that increases our trade deficit. Agriculture sector, our human capital is trained in it. We have land. We have these research centers which should be working on the new seeds which enhance the productivity. I think we should have a good business plan how to enhance agrarian productivity, and I think that can lead to a very good economic growth in this particular sector.
Dr. Anil, let's talk about this policy rate that's now fixed on 22%.
Yes.
I remember the argument made by several experts 2 years ago when our exchange rate, our policy interest rate was at 13 to 14%.
Yes.
And they were believing this to come back from there because that was the highest we had seen, perhaps in last 1 decade or more. Now at 22%, don't you think that this is one of the most difficult factors to the industries that we are trying to establish, or the industries that we are trying to facilitate in this country, if the borrowing by the industry would become so expensive, don't you think that the industrial process will halt in the country?
Well, if you look at the economic theory, your argument that you are presenting, that's perfectly right. But I look at it from a different perspective. How much of the industry is taking loan from these banks? If you look at the footprint, 85% of the loans from these banks is being taken by the government. And I'll tell you the number that from 2018 till 2023, there are two major factors that has hurt Pakistan economy. Number one is your devaluation, and number two is your payments on the interest rates. So therefore, as the interest rates are increasing, we have been paying around 70% of our federal income on these on the interest payments. So if you look at the devaluation from 2018 to 2023, it is around 37 billion US dollars. And number two, if you look at the interest payments that we have made, it is 111.6 billion US dollars. So the cumulative amount of money that Pakistan has been giving out, that comes around 148 billion dollars. So yes, your point is perfectly valid that with the high interest rate, yes, isn't it unsustainable for the manufacturing sector to go for more expansion or not? But the problem is that who is utilizing, who is taking these loans? I look at a different picture, that it is the government that is taking these loans. It's not the manufacturing sector. How much companies are taking loans, that is very minute amount. So if you look at that, if this interest rate is going to be high, we see that it has reduced the inflation. And one of the reasons that why we are keeping the policy rate high, it is basically to control the inflation. And now we are seeing in the April that, okay, that inflation has reduced to 17.3%.
But the flip side of the same argument
Yes.
can be that since the loans are so expensive, it's only the government that can afford to have the luxury of availing loans at such a high rate. And industry would not even make 22% profit
Yes.
in its books, particularly if it has to pay 40 to 45% of taxes. So that actually makes it physically impossible for the industry to take loans on such a number. And that's why the government always goes for 80 to 85%.
The government do not have a choice. That's why it is taking the loans, right? But for the private sector, yes, it's a 350 billion economy, but we also need to understand that around 45 to 50% of the economy is undocumented. And most of the transactions are not through the banks. It's basically that the informal economy also plays a very important part that is keeping the circle running.
Coming to the foreign reserves that remain
13.
a pain in the neck of every government that we have. We understand that every year there is a huge number, there's a larger number. Sometime we hear it's 23 or 24 billion dollars that the government need to pay back within a financial year. But I've just read that 13.28 billion dollars is our net foreign reserves
Right
at the
now.
moment.
At the moment, yes.
So where does it come from?
It's basically coming from the remittances, from your trade, from your exports, as I told you.
It certainly is not our trade surplus, right?
Yes, it's not yet the trade surplus, but mostly it's coming from the remittances.
And how good of a news it is for the economics, for the economic levels of this country.
As I said, that the current account being positive, yes, it's a good news, but balance of trade is still negative. Overall, the balance of payment is still deficit, but that deficit has reduced. What we really need is that you need to have the economic activity going on. And for the economic activity, why someone is going to invest in the economy, that the investor needs to have confidence that, okay, there is some stability. Our foreign exchange rate has shown a stability. As we have seen in the past few months, there were 3 rates that was in play, but now the forex stability also shows a very positive sign in the economy.
Dr. you didn't comment on the exchange rate.
Yes.
That has been stable for a very long time. I personally remember this USD to be at 330
Yes.
At some point in Pakistan's
Now
market, and it has remained on 270 to 276 for quite a while
yes,
now.
yes.
While we are still facing a trade deficit, while we still are owing a lot of money to these foreign creditors, how does the government maintain this exchange rate fixed at this level?
You see, over the past few months, why we were having problem, and the government also initiated the dollar flight, that okay, you cannot take out the dollar, and then we had these import bans leading to import quotas, and such kind of interventions were needed because there were three foreign exchange rates that were in Pakistan. Number one was the interbank, number two was basically the open market, and the third one was the grey market, which was that the dollars are not available, but still people, and that moved around 350 US dollars. But then there was a crackdown by the government on these money changes, and that brought stability in the forex market. And now I think things are moving in a right direction, that as you see over the past few months, it has stayed in the bandwidth of like 177 till
270 to 276.
Yes, 270 to 276, yeah. So that stability also gives you a predictability in your decision making, that whether you can import and you are importing at a rate in which the rate is not going to fluctuate that much. So that also plays a very important role.
So how do you see this going forward? Because we still are heading toward June, where we conclude our financials, we conclude our balance sheets, and then we see what deficit do we have, we start looking for money from external factors. Do you think there's going to be a rise in demand of USD in Pakistan's local market?
Right now, the supply of dollar has increased, given the 1.1 billion coming from IMF. But what I see, I think the challenging or the crucial question mark for the government is going to be the budget. Budget is going to define that how the economy it's going to be. But I think the government needs to restructure, needs to have a very conscious effort in terms of the tax collection. One thing that has happened, that the FBR missed the target for April. What was they targeting? That target was not fulfilled. I always say that if your internal tax collection or if your internal revenue building model is sustainable, then we don't have to depend upon the external resources. I'll just quote one figure that at the moment there is 2.24 trillion Pak rupees that is going in tax exemptions. We need a forensic audit that where this 2.24 trillion is, why this amount is being exempted. And if that kind of amount can be curtailed, your tax revenue structure is much better.
This reminds me of many promises that had been made by the previous government about the restructuring. There were some news items flashed in the newspapers as well, that not only IMF has hinted, but also the government has promised to do something about the restructuring of FBR for all the reasons that you mentioned and the reason that you even did not. So where are we on that?
At the moment, if you look at a week, 2-3 days back, the PM has announced that there has to be certain major changes have been made in FBR, and that might there has been voices that we need to digitize the FBR. There has been certain proposals that introducing blockchain into it, that okay, where the leakages, where we are unable to collect the tax revenue, where people are not coming into the tax net, they need to be bring into the tax net, because you see that once you are utilizing the public services, once you're using the public goods, it's not just one side of the story that the government is unable to collect the taxes. I always say that are people that responsible, that they are also willing to pay the taxes or not? Because people think that okay, we can utilize the public services, as we have seen in the terms of electricity, in terms of water, these public utilities, but I think it is both ways, that the government also needs to play its role in terms of the tax collection, in terms of easing the tax structure, like the tax base need to be increased and the tax rate needs to be reduced. But on the other side, I think people needs to be responsible, think like a nation, that we need to pay taxes.
Dr. There is a disparity in the direct and indirect taxes as well.
Yes.
At the moment when we speak, we are taxing the person running a Chingchi on the petrol pump at the same rate for which a person owning a Prado or even more expensive vehicle. So don't you think that while we are talking about the reforms that need to be made in FBR to broaden the tax base, as you rightly pointed out, is it not also equally important to think about the other types of taxes that are affecting everyone?
Yes, like if you see that over in the last few days, there was a, it's the good news is that we are moving towards renewables, but there was a rumor that okay, the government is going to tax
the solar panels,
right? So then the Ministry of Power said that okay, there's nothing that sort of going on. Yes, they might be looking into it, but again, if you look at the problem, it's with the IPPs. That okay, whether they produce or they do not produce, you are still going to make the payment. But people who are actually generating their own electricity, you might penalize them. So there is a fault into it. And instead of correcting that IPP thing, why to penalize the solar panel users? Because it's a good thing that we are moving towards renewable energy. So the tax structure and the kind of taxes the government is introducing, that needs to be they need to be relooked. They need to be seen that okay, what kind of taxes are good. They have to be progressive in nature. Like if you, the Chingchi wala needs to pay less tax, obviously, as compared to the Parada wala. But I think there needs to be an accountability also, that from where that income is coming. Because as I said, that one of the problems is that the income is undocumented. It's mostly informal. Now people prefer having a cash transactions rather than having it through the banks.
So your Aladdin lamp is the documentation of the economy.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anil Salman, for being guest in our show. And ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a break here and we'll join you back with second segment of the program. Stay with us. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. The war in Gaza is one of the worst crises that we have seen in our lifetime. This is a genocide. This is a butchery. This is a manslaughter that has remained unstopped. Despite all the efforts made diplomatically and politically, the people of Gaza are still facing the Israeli drones, the Israeli bombs, and the ground invasions that remain unhalted. Recently, there was a remark made by the head of the United Nations World Food Programme, who said that northern Gaza is now facing a full-blown hunger crisis. Rightly so. No food is allowed inside. And how much food would a city carry that has been bombed and fired from all the directions? That is actually in a state of seizure since the beginning of this war. But unfortunately, the entire humanity, the entire mankind has not been able to help these poor people of Gaza. To talk about this very pertinent subject, we have invited an Arab scholar in our show, Nazir Moeed, who frequently appears in my program and is an expert of Middle East. Nazir, welcome to the show.
Welcome, Shabbat.
We are talking about this very sensitive subject, which is close to everybody's heart, which gives us a cry. and which we have not been able to help. Now, today we are talking about these children that have not seen any fresh supply of food for such a long time. What do you make of the remarks made by the head of World Food Program today?
Well, it's very true. It's very true. People of Gaza, they have been facing this hunger since many months, since October till today. It's now the 8th month. And people are suffering from this long war. It's a very long war in the 21st century, and the people have no basic necessities of life. They don't have clean drinking water. They cannot afford to have regular meals. They have bread after few days. The children are dying of hunger and of not drinking water for many days. So the situation is very bad. The situation is it's unhuman, and the humanity needs to stand. I think this hunger is changing the world. Actually, many officials of the United Nations and even the European Union, they clearly said that this war is causing a tragedy in Gaza. It is the people, millions of people, more than 2 million are displaced. 1.1 million are under hunger. So what more are we waiting for? What more the world is waiting for?
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm joined by Mr. Ahmed Zaki, another expert of Middle East, Dr. Ahmed Zaki, joining me from Somaliland. Dr. Ahmed Zaki, welcome you to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Dr. Ahmed Zaki, health infrastructure is in shambles and Gaza is hungry. There is no food there. World Food Program is now requesting that there should be food allowed through the crossings of Rafah. What do you think is stopping the West from supplying food to these people who are being bombed in any case, hungry or full? They are being bombed day and night.
Since the first day of the war begins in Gaza, the Israeli administration was very clear on their target that they are going to eliminate or annihilate the complete Gaza, that it will be uninhabitable, that it will not be possible that the human being will ever be survive in Gaza. That's how they designed the war, and it was not the intention of going against the Hamas or a resistant group, whether it's Islamic Jihad or any other organization, but it was directly against the inhabitant of Gaza, whether it's child, woman, or any other part of the human being who are living there. They were targeting deliberately by cutting the water, energy, and any other supply that goes through Gaza. And not only that, they are bombarding any humanitarian agency goes for help. That they are bombarding the people who are working to help the hungry people, the people who are being affected by the genocide design of Israeli war against the civilians in Gaza.
Zaki, they say in English, hop with the hare and to hunt with the hound at the same time. The United States of America is throwing food supplies for the people of Gaza. At least we can see that on screens. We don't know whether it's actually happening to a great extent or not. But also providing Israel with funding to buy more bombs to bomb the people of Gaza. And correct me if I'm mistaken, that this dual role is now even criticized heavily within the United States as well.
This was for a long time American Hippocratic policy towards the Palestinian people. They were, for the first day, they were with the Israelis, and they are happy for the genocide designed by the help of American military equipment and military advisories. They are giving help to do a genocide against the people living in Gaza. This is documented by the human rights organization, UN organizations, independent journalists. They are killing everyone who's inside, no matter what's your nationality, your religion, or anything that you belong to. Even the American citizens who are going for help inside Gaza, they are targeting deliberately with the help of government of USA. That's completely in the hands of American advisories and American military leadership, not only Israelis. So it's combined genocide design helped by the people and the administration of Washington. And it's no doubt, no matter who will be in the Washington, they will continue the same, whether it's Democratic or Republican. There will be no difference for Gaza.
Coming back to you, so how do you see the role of Egypt in this entire problem? And I say Egypt in specific because Gaza has remained to be a part of Egypt for a very long time. There is just a wall that divides the two. On one side of this wall, there is bombing. On the other side of the wall, there are Egyptian cars running. So, how you see the role of Egypt amid this crisis?
Egypt unfortunately didn't play so much positive role in this tragedy. For a long time, many months, the borders were closed even for the relief goods, and in front of all the containers standing in a long line on the border, waiting for the Egyptian authorities to allow them to enter Gaza. Recently, there was some relaxation for the relief goods to enter Gaza. The flour and the food supplies started going inside, while before even 1 month, 25 kgs of flour costed $1,200. Believe it or not, now it have reduced due to the easiness of the supplies going inside Gaza, but still it's not even acceptable to put a lot of problems, lot of difficulties and complications and taxes on the goods reaching to Gaza for relief. There must be some more relaxation, some more cooperation with all the humanitarian agencies and the UN and the UNRWA to supply goods, relief goods, and health care to the people of Gaza, because the people are dying every day, and the Israeli authorities are just making genocide against the people, and the whole world is still silent. And the world is not supporting the people of Gaza. They are supporting Israel instead. So the Egyptian authorities, they have a moral responsibility towards the borders, towards their neighbors, towards their Muslim brothers.
Coming back to you, Ahmed Zaki, President Biden's stances have been changing on this issue. Sometimes he's found to be standing behind the Israeli administration, and sometimes he's reminding them of their humanitarian responsibilities. How do you think it is going to affect the legitimacy of his administration, or how is it going to define his vision, particularly at brinks of an upcoming election?
And when it came to the political administration of White House, it's especially when it came to the Middle East, it's not been designed by the incompetent of the White House. Usually, it's been designed by the establishment of United States America, which is mostly funded by the Jewish lobbies in the United States and other weapon industries who are investing American foreign policy to create a war and chaos across the world so that they can make billions of dollars. And that's no doubt, and everybody knows that. The problem that now they are facing, that it's dual face that comes from the White House, regardless of the historical background. Look, from 2006, 2008, 2009, 2010, 11, 12, 14, 16, 18, 2019, and today, 2024. All that wars have been funded by America, supported by America. And when it came to the international media, they are telling we are sympathetic for the Palestinian people. We are trying to make a two-state solution. But actually, they are the one behind the alienation of the people of Palestine. And there's no doubt, everybody knows today in the world that it's American policy to eliminate Palestinian people from their own land so that they can establish their own colony in the Middle East to control the rich Arab countries for their national wealth, especially when it came to the energy supply of the Middle East. And unless they are going to change their foreign policy by influencing the major companies of America, it will never change, no matter who's going to come into the White House. On the other hand, the people who are voting for Biden, now you can see the American colleges are protesting against the war. But no matter how much they were propagating the human rights and they were dictating to the rest of the world, including Pakistan, whenever there is a protest, they were dictating them and they were telling that you should have to follow the human rights protection and you should have to protect the people's rights and freedom of expression. But when it came to them, they are ignoring and they are putting hundreds of students peacefully protesting into the jails. Because why? Because they are against the Zionist design of war and the people who are hungry to shed a lot of blood. And that is the design of the foreign policy of America, hijacked by the companies, invest in American foreign policy and putting a lot of money into the American political leaders. So it's general concept in every scholar in the world and every student in international relations or any other in university level today can understand easily.
But Dr. Ahmed Zaki, the political or diplomatic rhetoric in the Europe is now changing. Europe that was reluctant to realize what is happening in Gaza is now, its parliament is now calling officially for a permanent ceasefire. So how big of a development do you think this is and what impact it might have on the diplomatic or on the political situation that Israel faces on the international front?
Israel will face for the coming 20 to 30 years, they will face a lot of criticism from the friends and the foes equally. And it will face this pressure for a long time. But when you see the political system in Israel, you will understand why the Israeli administration today are ignoring the European powers. Because it's because of Netanyahu. He don't want to leave the power, and he built a coalition with extremist Jewish Zionism, and they want and they believe it by the core of their hearts to eliminate all other peoples who are living in the land of Palestine, and they are saying that this is inherited by God and it should have to be lived only and only by Jews, and eliminating anyone else other than the Jews is their mandatory, and that's what they believe. The defense minister of Israel said publicly that we are fighting with human animal, like that they don't deserve to live. We have to eliminate them. And that same person is meeting the foreign minister of USA and sitting with the foreign ministers of the European Union, and they cannot criticize him. They cannot even dictate him. And still, no matter how much they are politically correct, but their actions are louder than that. They are selling weapons and they are raising billions of dollars from the taxpayers of European people to put the bucket of the Israeli administration to commit a genocide in Gaza.
Nazir, your closing comments on this entire conversation that we had today.
Well, as you have mentioned, Cindy McLean have mentioned that there is an acute hunger in north of Gaza, and it's spreading toward the south of Gaza and towards the whole city of Gaza and Rafah. People are under a genocide. The world should change its reaction towards these poor people, towards these suffering people of Gaza, and the 1.5 people who are under hunger, 2.5 people who are suffering from this war. 2 million people are IDPs, whether they are refugees, whether internally or externally. This suffering has to stop. The world has to stop this terrorist regime.
Thank you very much, Nazir Moeed. Thank you very much, Dr. Ahmed Zaki, for being guest in our shows. Ladies and gentlemen, my last comments in this show will be, when you sleep in peace, when you eat the meal, when you feed your children, think of Gaza. Gaza is burning. Gaza is thirsty. Gaza is hungry. We'll join you next week with another program. And until then, Allah Hafiz.